What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. We are only a week away before we get any new trailers for Halo Infinite, and I think it's safe to say that everyone is looking forward to it, but some of us are also concerned about what we will see since 343 is the one making this new Halo, and Halo 4 and 5 weren't really received well compared to Bungie's games. Everyone is currently talking about the campaign and what they hope to see in this so-called reboot, but I find very few videos discussing the multiplayer side of things, so I wanted to make this video on what I want in Halo Infinite's multiplayer, since that's where the vast majority of players are going to spend their time after they complete the campaign, and Infinite is really Halo's last chance to bring professional Halo back into the spotlight. Keep in mind that I value competitive gameplay more than casual. While I don't hate playing Halo casually, I just find games to be more fun when it's balanced and involves teamwork, and this list isn't in any specific order. This is just what I would like to see in Infinite's multiplayer. I don't want to waste any of your guys' time with this intro, so let's get into the first thing I would want to see, and that is the ranked version of the multiplayer to be the same as the casual version. The one thing I always found annoying about competitive Halo was that both the maps and the gunplay was drastically different from the casual side of the game. I can see the argument of making ranked a unique experience and a reason for players to try it out, but it creates a lot of issues along the way. Let's go over the gunplay first. Sometimes Bungie and 343 changes the gunplay of their game if they don't feel like pros will be interested in the base game. Reach was hit the hardest with this, so I'll use that as an example. There are currently 3 different settings in Reach on PC: Vanilla, TU, and MLG. Vanilla was how Reach originally launched, with Bloom, Bleed Through, and Armor abilities. The only way you could play like this in the official matchmaking is if you play Invasion. TU is almost the same as Vanilla, but with Bloom reduced. MLG removed Bloom, Bleed Through, Armor abilities, and increased the player speed by 10%. The problem is that all 3 of these settings coexisted with each other, which would confuse new players when it came to determining which version of Reach is the official one. So if new players think that they could get into competitive with the knowledge they have from casual, well, they're going to be disappointed, since casual and competitive are so different from each other that they're not even the same game. Now onto the maps. If you ever watched any pro matches of Reach, you'd begin to notice that half of the maps were remakes of old maps made through Forge, and the official maps that were in the map pool were drastically changed. Let's use Zealot as an example. In casual, the sword spawns in this area at the 10-minute 10-second mark. In MLG, it's a grenade launcher that is available as soon as the game starts. This isn't as confusing as the gameplay changes, but it's still really annoying to have everything new players learn in casual to become completely pointless in competitive. I'm not hating on the idea of changing the game later on, just apply the changes to both casual and competitive and not just competitive. The second thing I want in this game is having the game being projectile based. This might be a bit controversial since some people like hit scan while others like projectile, so let me explain why I would want projectile. If having the MCC on PC has taught me anything about the controller and mouse and keyboard controversy, is that the projectile based gunplay is more playable than hit scan gameplay on a mouse and keyboard. I go a bit more into detail with this video on the top right, but in a shorter version, Halo Reach and 2 are hitscan based. Both of those games are infested with controller players, since aim assist plus hitscan based gameplay is completely in favor of controllers. Halo 1 and 3 currently have the least amount of aim assist complaints, since both are projectile based, which means that you have to lead your shots, which is a bit easier with a mouse and keyboard. While Xbox players might not like this since they only have controllers to play with, you have to remember that 343 is currently trying to convert their competitive scene to PC. If 343 makes the game hit scan based, there's a good chance that controller players would infest the game once again, which would ruin the point of the game coming to PC. Having the game being projectile based is the safest way to go if 343 wants a PC focused competitive scene. That and little to no aim assist. Speaking of the pro scene, let's move on to the next part of our list, and that is 343 focusing the pro scene on one device. The pro scene for Halo is kind of stalled at the moment. Right before Reach released on PC, 343 announced that they would be moving the professional scene to PC, starting with Reach at DreamHack Anaheim. On paper, this was an excellent idea since PC is the biggest gaming platform and everyone wanted to see Halo at a level we have never seen before. Rainbow Six converted their scene to PC successfully, so how could Halo not do the same? But then Reach released and it was pretty much ruined. For starters, PC gamers were very limited with the game. Uncapped FPS is here, but somehow it makes the game run worse to the point where a 60 FPS cap would actually be better, which is already a huge turnoff for most competitive PC gamers since they are not going to settle for a 60 FPS cap, especially when converting from games like Overwatch and CSGO. There were input delay issues, movement issues such as not being able to crouch while moving, but what really put the nail in the coffin was aim assist. When people started to realize how powerful Reach's aim assist was, mouse and keyboard players began to convert to controllers since that was the only way they could keep up. I kid you not, people were converting from mouse and keyboard to controllers. I never thought I would be able to say that, but that's what really happened. To give you an idea of how bad this was, the free-for-all tournament I went to had at least 100 participants, and out of those 100 or so players, only 3 people, including myself, used a mouse and keyboard, which is terrible for an FPS on PC. You could argue that mouse and keyboard players just needed more time to understand Halo before we could see them in action. It would have made sense back then, but Halo 2 Anniversary had the same issue when it was released on PC by becoming another game with disappointing PC performance and strong aim assist. Does a 60 FPS cap while playing with a controller remind you of something? It should. That's how the console ports of Halo work. If your average PC gamer is told that the only way they can be competitively viable in Halo on PC is by capping the frames at 60 and by playing with a controller, they're probably going to wonder why the pro scene is even on PC in the first place if it's not going to appeal to its target audience. 343's excuse for not adjusting the aim assist is because they wanted to keep controllers and mouse and keyboards balanced. I've said this multiple times and I will keep saying this. Controllers and mouse and keyboards will never, I repeat, never be equal no matter how much in-game tweaking the developers do. One will always be better than the other, and it's up to 343 to decide which peripheral will be the dominant one. My logic is that it should be the peripheral of the pro scene's preferred gaming system. If 343 wants Infinite's pro scene to be on PC, they have to appeal to that audience, which means little to no aim assist, proper mouse and keyboard support, uncapped frames, etc, etc. If 343 wants controller players to be dominant in the game or just to keep the current pro players into the scene, keep it on Xbox. You cannot have a controller-dominant FPS title on PC since no one will take it seriously. If you try to mix the two, both communities will not be happy since Xbox players now have to go out and buy a PC, and PC gamers have to downgrade their games by playing it like a console. I get that 343 doesn't want to betray their current pro players while trying to revive Halo esports, but sacrifices need to be made if they want to bring the pro scene onto PC. And there's nothing wrong with keeping it on Xbox. Call of Duty does this with PlayStation, even though theoretically PC would be better. They're keeping it on PS4 and they're doing perfectly fine. The fourth thing I would want in this game is no RNG based gameplay. What I mean by this is that I don't want to see things like custom loadouts or the ability to choose what armor ability you want. While I like the concept of being able to choose what class you want based on your playstyle, it doesn't work with Halo. Halo is a game where you can predict almost everything your opponents do. You know what they spawn with, what power weapons they pick up, and when and where those power weapons will spawn again. Having a loadout based system ruins this since you'll never know what each player spawns with, which is why Halo Reach and 4 were so hated by competitive players. I doubt we'll be getting RNG based gameplay, but we did get a leaked picture of a Spartan having a grappling hook, which indicates that we'll be getting some kind of armor ability system. If the game is going to have armor abilities, they'll probably work just like power weapons and will be a one-time use thing, or something like the power-ups from Halo 3. The second to last request for this video is no more forged maps. Let me clarify what this means. Ever since Halo 3 released Forge, both Bungie and 343 began to implement forged maps from the community and from themselves into matchmaking. While I support 343 implementing community-made maps into matchmaking, they began to abuse this by using Forge to remake old maps and implement them into competitive play. Both Reach and 2 Anniversary had this issue. Remember Sanctuary from Halo 2? Just take a look at this, both the old and the new version. Now let's take a look at the Halo Reach forged version of it. Or let's take a look at Halo 3's Narrows, now a forged version of that. You see the problem here? While these Forge maps don't change how legendary these maps are, Forge just makes them look boring and empty. What I'm trying to say here is that if 343 wants to add in more maps, make them look like they were made for the game and not just spiritless copy and paste of older maps. What 343 could do when it comes to implementing Forge maps is by having a separate playlist to have players test these maps out before they're given textures. This way they can have players pick and choose which maps should be truly implemented into the game while throwing out the ones that fans don't want. Kind of like the experimental mode in Overwatch and the beta servers for CSGO. I know this video is kind of getting long, so let me just move on to the final thing I want for Halo Infinite's multiplayer, and that is custom faces. This might not be game changing or a popular request, but having custom faces has been a wish of mine for many years now. Having custom armor made each player's Spartan unique. You got to show off how you saw yourself in the Halo universe or how hard you worked for that recon armor. But why not take it a bit further by showing off the you part of the Spartan? What got me interested in this idea was Season 9 of Red vs. Blue. Rooster Teeth usually made episodes using the lowering weapon button combo and by using Theater mode as the camera while syncing their voices into the footage. At some point, they began merging the game's engine with animated programs such as Poser and Autodesk Maya. With Season 9, they took a different approach by dedicating the Project Freelancer portion to pre-rendered CGI. This opened up so many opportunities to show off these characters beyond the game engine's limits, and I absolutely loved it, which is the point I'm trying to make with this. 343 giving us custom faces could open up so many opportunities with the multiplayer and co-op experience. You could take off your helmet during casual games, firefight, and they could also use this as an excuse to make small campaigns later after a launch that aren't too important to the Halo timeline, but a way to keep players engaged with the game after the campaign. This concept isn't even new. ODST gave you the ability to take off your helmet in firefight while having the faces of the characters from the ODST campaign. Another game that does this well is Destiny. Destiny already has a system like this where your helmet stays on during combat and you have the option to take it off while you're at the tower. Again, this isn't a game changer or a popular request, which is why I put it at the last of this list, but it's something I hope 343 will consider either for Infinite or the next installment of the franchise. Anyways, that is it for today's video. I know I ruffled some jimmies out there, so tell me your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Other than that, I hope you did enjoy the video. Subscribe for more content, and I'll talk to you all later. Peace.